Welcome to the truth behind the curse of Canaan, Genesis 9 re-examined. Welcome to Part 2, Section 1, examining the alleged act, debunking the sexual sin theories. This is Part 2 of a 10-part series diving deep into one of the most misunderstood passages in the Bible, Genesis 9, 20-27. In this section, we will critically assess the various interpretations that suggest Ham's transgression in Genesis 9 involves sexual misconduct. These theories range from voyeurism to more severe allegations like paternal or maternal misconduct. We'll examine the scriptural basis for these claims, evaluate their historical and cultural contexts, and consider alternative perspectives that challenge these traditional views. Let's delve into the text and explore what it truly reveals about this controversial episode. 1. Examining the alleged act. Leviticus is legal code, not a narrative of Genesis. 9. Modern interpreters frequently make a hermeneutical blunder by retroactively importing the legal codes of Leviticus into Genesis 9. But this is a false equivalence. Leviticus was compiled centuries after the flood narrative, during the formation of Israel's priestly and national identity. It is prescriptive while Genesis is descriptive. They serve different theological and literary functions. Leviticus outlines covenantal obligations specific to Israel under Mosaic law. To assume that ideas like parental defilement, purity laws, or ritual uncleanness were already in effect before the flood is to force later beliefs onto an earlier story, something the text itself never supports. The Torah's legal terminology had not yet been given. Therefore, to interpret nakedness in Genesis using the indirect or symbolic meanings found in Leviticus, especially the idea that father's nakedness means sex with the mother, is reading later priestly ideas into a much older and unrelated story. This misapplication has been used to justify sensational readings, like the incest theory, despite the fact that Genesis provides no legal framework, no moral ruling, and no divine censure based on the Levitical standard. It's as if scholars are trying to force a later system of law onto an earlier historical framework. That's not exegesis, that's theological colonialism. Misuse of the euphemism. Father's nakedness. The phrase father's nakedness in Genesis 9:22 has often been interpreted as a polite or symbolic way of saying something sexual, even though that kind of indirect language doesn't appear in the Hebrew text. Scholars who promote this theory fail to distinguish between two Hebrew formulations, the verb ra'ah, to see, and the phrase gila erva, to uncover nakedness. The latter is consistently used throughout Leviticus to denote sexual activity. But that phrase doesn't appear anywhere in Genesis at all. Let's take a closer look at Genesis 9:22. This is the verse that gets twisted the most. The Hebrew says, Vayaraham abi Canaan et ervat aviv. Transliteration, Vayarham avi Canaan et ervat aviv. Translation, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father. Now watch closely. Two words matter here. Vayar, he saw ervat. Nakedness of. No uncovering, no physical action. Just seeing. That's all the verse says. It doesn't say he uncovered it. It doesn't say he did anything. The Hebrew uses the simple verb for looking, vayar, not gila, which means to uncover. The word we'd expect if something sexual or aggressive had happened. And yet, whole doctrines were built on this one line, ignoring what the text actually says. This is important. The Hebrew text clearly attributes the act of disrobing to Noah himself. He becomes drunk and lays uncovered inside his tent. There is no verb implying that Ham undressed, assaulted, or even touched Noah. The crime, if any, is visual, not sexual. In Leviticus, uncovering nakedness always refers to sexual relations. If the Genesis writer wanted to imply incest, they had the vocabulary to do so. Instead, the text deliberately chooses the verb vayara, from the root ra'ah, meaning to see or to perceive. In this context, it indicates that Ham observed his father's nakedness. That's a critical distinction ignored by proponents of the rape or incest theories. Genesis does not shy away from explicit sexual sins. Genesis isn't squeamish. When sexual sin occurs, the text says so, unambiguously. Think of Reuben, who went up to his father's bed and slept with Bilhah, Genesis 35:22. There's no euphemism there. Think of Judah and Tamar. Genesis makes it absolutely clear that a sexual act occurred. So why would the Genesis writer suddenly become coy in the Noah narrative, using a vague and passive verb, if the offense were truly as serious as incest or maternal rape? The answer is they wouldn't. The absence of the usual Hebrew euphemisms for sex, especially to uncover nakedness or to lie with, is telling. It strongly suggests that the offense was not sexual at all. The entire logic of the incest or rape theory collapses under linguistic scrutiny. It's a house of cards built not on the text itself but on later rabbinic and Christian projections trying to justify power structures, purity codes, or racial hierarchies. This concludes Welcome to Part 2, Section 1. Examining the Alleged Act, Debunking the Sexual Sin. Theories in the next installment, Part 2, Section 2. Examining the Alleged Act. Misuse of the phrase father's nakedness. We'll continue to examine the claims of sexual misconduct in Genesis 9, challenging traditional interpretations and exploring alternative perspectives. Please like, share, and subscribe.